That's what my uncle told me when I was 12 years old, after I asked why he and Aunt Denise never once came to my school plays, while they bought front row tickets to every single one of my cousin's dance recitals. My name is Claire Dawson. I lost both of my parents in a car crash when I was 6. I don't remember much from that night except the smell of burnt leather and a flash of red lights. What I do remember, vividly, is waking up in the hospital with a broken arm and seeing my aunt and uncle for the first time in months. Not crying, not embracing me, just nodding like picking me up was another chore on their to-do list. They took me in. I was lucky, according to everyone. At least I had family. At least I wasn't in foster care. What they didn't know was that being in that house felt lonelier than any orphanage ever could have been. Kennedy, my cousin, was the daughter they always wanted. Blonde, bubbly, delicate. Everything in that house revolved around her. If she was tired, the whole family had to be quiet. If she was sick, the world stopped. And me, I was the spare. The strong one. The kid who'd already seen too much and should know better than to ask for attention. I still remember the Christmas when Kennedy got an iPad and I got socks. Not that I ever said anything. I knew better by then. I learned how to fade into the background, how to survive without making noise. But I also learned how to study people, and I learned how to work. From middle school on, I had straight A's. I won local science fairs. I joined debate, math team, volunteered on weekends. Nobody noticed. Kennedy once won 3rd place in a cupcake decorating contest, and my aunt made a Facebook post like she'd cured cancer. I used to think if I worked hard enough, they'd see me, that maybe I could earn their love. But every time I brought home a certificate or achievement, Uncle Mark would just nod and say, "That's nice, Claire. Maybe don't rub it in Kennedy's face, though." It was always Kennedy who needed the praise. Kennedy who needed support. Kennedy who needed private dance lessons, SAT tutors, summer programs in Europe. When college application season came, they sat her down and said, "Whatever you need, sweetie, we'll cover it." When I brought up my applications, Aunt Denise looked over her glasses and said, "You're a resourceful girl, Claire. You'll figure it out." So I did. I applied for every scholarship I could find. I took the bus to interviews. I stayed up nights writing essays while Kennedy browsed prom dresses online. I got into one of the top state universities with almost full funding. Kennedy got into a private liberal arts college that cost nearly $60,000 a year, and they paid for it without blinking. We both left for college that fall. She had a dorm suite with catered meals and weekend trips. I had a shared room in an old building and 3 part-time jobs, cleaning classrooms, shelving books, and working at a 24-hour diner. I didn't complain. I'd been building resilience since I was 6. I rarely went home for holidays. When I did, I was met with awkward questions like, "You still working all those little jobs?" While Kennedy bragged about her new MacBook and how her professor invited her to a poetry retreat in Maine. I was invisible, but I kept pushing. And then, one summer night, after wiping down tables at the diner and heading back to campus, I saw a new email notification. "You've been nominated for the Prescott National Scholarship." I stared at it for a full minute. That scholarship was huge. National recognition, internship placements, travel stipends, mentorship with top firms. Only 5 students in the country received it each year. And the kicker? I hadn't even applied. Someone had submitted my name without telling me. I clicked open the email with trembling hands, and that's when I saw it. Nominated by Dr. Matthew Kaplan, the man who barely said 2 words to most students, had seen me. That moment changed everything. But what I didn't know was that this scholarship would not only put me on a national stage, it would also completely shatter the pedestal Kennedy had been standing on her whole life. I sat in my dorm room, lit only by the soft glow of my desk lamp, reading that email over and over again like it might disappear. The Prescott National Scholarship. I had heard about it in passing. People whispered its name like it was some unattainable myth. Only 5 students in the whole country were chosen, and most of them came from Ivy League schools or had parents who were CEOs, politicians, or donors. Kids who never had to scrape tables at midnight or budget out their textbooks from tip money. But there I was, on the short list. And someone had seen me. Someone had thought I was worth nominating. Dr. Kaplan, the most brutally honest professor in our department, the one who never gave out A's unless you bled for them, had chosen me. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I didn't even smile. I just sat there in silence, feeling something I couldn't quite name, like a weight was lifting, slowly, but it still hurt where it had been pressing for so long. I didn't tell my aunt and uncle. I didn't tell Kennedy either. After years of being ignored, dismissed, or talked over, I'd learned that my victories were better celebrated in silence. Why offer them something else to downplay? I started working on the application. They asked for an essay, a video submission, professor recommendations, and a breakdown of my academic journey. For once, I didn't hold back. I told the truth, the late nights, the cleaning jobs, the scholarships, the way I'd fought for every inch of my education while balancing 3 part-time roles. Dr. Kaplan reviewed my essay, gave some brutally helpful feedback, and looked me dead in the eye before I submitted it. "Claire," he said, "you deserve this. Don't doubt it for a second." Weeks passed. I didn't mention a word to anyone. Finals came and went. I buried myself in my work and waited. Then, one morning, my phone buzzed while I was sweeping the library floor before class. "Congratulations, Claire Dawson. You've been selected as one of this year's 5 Prescott Scholars." I dropped the broom. I'd done it. For a full hour, I just sat there behind the check-in desk, clutching the email like it was a lifeline. I'd done it without anyone's help, without anyone's money, without anyone's fake encouragement. And then came the second email. I was invited to attend the formal award ceremony held at one of the most prestigious universities on the East Coast. Travel expenses covered. Business attire required. You may bring up to 2 guests. I hesitated. I thought about ignoring the invitation. But then I remembered how many times I'd sat quietly at Kennedy's recitals, birthdays, and banquets, clapping politely while she soaked in the applause for the bare minimum. How many times I'd been told to be quiet, don't make a scene, stop asking for more. So I did the unthinkable. I called home. Aunt Denise picked up. Her voice had that usual tightness, like talking to me was an errand. "Hi," I said. "I won something, a national scholarship. There's a ceremony. They invited me to bring 2 guests. It's in 2 weeks." Silence. "Wow," she finally said, sounding more confused than impressed. "What kind of scholarship?" "It's called the Prescott. It's kind of a big deal. I thought maybe you and Uncle Mark could come." "Oh, I don't know, Claire. That sounds like a lot. And you didn't tell us you were applying." "Because you never cared when I did before?" She eventually said she'd check their calendar. She sounded inconvenienced, like I'd asked her to help me move furniture instead of attend the biggest moment of my life. 2 days before the ceremony, she texted, "We'll come. Kennedy wants to tag along too." I didn't respond. The day of the event arrived. I wore the only nice dress I owned, did my hair the best I could, and stood in front of the mirror telling myself not to expect anything. I walked into the auditorium, heart pounding. There were people in tailored suits, media cameras, banners, and name placards on every seat. And then I saw them. My aunt, uncle, and Kennedy. She was wearing a designer dress and heels too high for the polished wood floor. Her eyes swept the room, like she was the one being honored. They didn't even make eye contact with me. When my name was called, the speaker began. "Claire Dawson is a standout not because of privilege or connections, but because of grit. She put herself through school, balancing jobs while maintaining top academic honors. She represents the best of what this scholarship stands for." The audience applauded. I walked to the stage with trembling hands. From the podium, I could see their faces. My aunt's jaw was clenched. My uncle looked stunned. But it was Kennedy's face that floored me. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't clapping. She looked lost. And that's when it hit me. For the first time in our lives, I was the one being watched. The ceremony was over. I stood outside the auditorium with a firm handshake from the dean still tingling in my palm and a thick engraved certificate tucked under my arm. The other recipients were surrounded by proud parents, professors, even news cameras. I stood alone. My aunt and uncle had stepped outside without saying much. Kennedy trailed behind them in silence, heels clicking too loudly for someone who'd barely clapped when my name was called. I didn't expect hugs, but I guess, deep down, I still thought someone might say, "We're proud of you." Instead, Aunt Denise crossed her arms and said, "I hope this doesn't go to your head, Claire." Humility is important. I blinked. That's what she led with. Uncle Mark followed up with, "Well, now that you've got this scholarship, maybe you can start helping out more. We've spent a lot on Kennedy. It's time the support goes both ways." The air around me froze. Kennedy didn't say anything, just scrolled on her phone like none of this was happening. I should have known better. But I still felt that sting, that weird mix of rage and disappointment that comes when you realize people don't just ignore your hard work. They resent it. The next few days moved fast. My inbox flooded with internship offers and mentorship invites. One of the biggest audit firms in the country even flew me out to New York for an interview. I wore the same black dress, added a blazer from Goodwill, and crushed that meeting. They offered me a summer placement on the spot. That night, I got a text from Kennedy. "Congrats. Mom says you should help me find something like that too. She thinks your method works better than ours now." I stared at the message. My method? You mean scraping grease off diner tables, walking home at 1 a.m., being told you'll figure it out every time I asked for help? That was the moment it started shifting. Quietly, but definitely. My aunt called next. She said they wanted to throw a celebration dinner at home, said it was a chance for family to reconnect. I didn't buy it, but I went, just to see how far they'd twist it. The dinner was uncomfortable from the second I walked in. Kennedy had already told some relatives I got the scholarship because her cousin's professor knew a guy. Uncle Mark toasted to Claire making the family proud, finally. Then came the big one. After dessert, Aunt Denise handed me an envelope and said, "We've been thinking. Since we supported you all these years, housing, food, school supplies, it's only fair you start contributing now that you're successful. Just a little something. We're not asking for much." Inside was a bill, itemized, every meal, every holiday gift, even the twin mattress I'd slept on for the past decade. Total, $11,674.29. I stared at it. My hands trembled, not from shock, but from the pure volcanic fury building in my chest. "You kept a ledger?" I asked quietly. Aunt Denise shrugged. "It's just a matter of principle. You're not a child anymore." "No," I said, standing up. "But I was. When you let me raise myself in your house. When you told me to figure it out while you bought Kennedy ballet lessons and designer coats." I could feel all the years of silence boiling over. Kennedy looked stunned. Uncle Mark looked annoyed. But Denise? She looked smug. And then I smiled. "Fine," I said. "Let's settle this like adults." The next morning, I emailed the Prescott Foundation. I told them the truth, that my guardians were trying to claim financial support retroactively, leveraging my scholarship as a payday. I included the bill. I explained that while I didn't want to make a public scene, I believed in transparency. They responded within hours. They not only offered to provide legal assistance, but they also forwarded the case to their donor board, a group that included the firm I had just accepted an offer from. That night, I got a call from Kennedy. She was sobbing. "The firm called me," she said, voice cracking. "They were going to offer me a marketing internship. They pulled it, said our family's actions showed unethical behavior." That's when I realized they hadn't just noticed me now. They were finally facing the consequences of erasing me for years. If you've ever been robbed of your voice like this, hit 2 in the comments. I know I'm not the only one. After the scholarship fallout and Kennedy's lost internship, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd back off. But no. That's not how people like my aunt and uncle operate. When they realized they couldn't profit off my success, they pivoted. They started spinning a different story. Family friends began reaching out to me with odd questions. Claire, are you really suing your aunt and uncle after all they did for you? Someone else asked, why would you smear Kennedy's name? She's heartbroken. That's when I realized they were painting me as the ungrateful one, the bitter, vindictive orphan who rose up and now wanted revenge. It was twisted, but honestly, they weren't completely wrong, because I was done playing the quiet, grateful girl. And if they thought I was dangerous before, wait until they saw what I could do with truth, timing, and receipts. The Prescott Foundation had already flagged their behavior, but I didn't want them just exposed. I wanted them held accountable. I contacted the scholarship board again and asked if I could submit a formal grievance. Not just about the bill they handed me, but about my entire childhood with them. The neglect, the favoritism, the manipulation. I told the board I wasn't looking for sympathy. I just wanted the truth documented. They agreed and suggested I put it in writing for the Foundation's annual transparency report. So I wrote it all. Every forgotten birthday. Every time I went to school with broken shoes. Every moment I'd begged for attention and was met with cold, backhanded praise like, "You're tough, you'll survive." I included the list they gave me with exact dollar amounts and dates, annotated with photos of the conditions I lived in. I attached Kennedy's tone-deaf texts, the audio recording from the celebration dinner, and even screenshots of her gossiping about me online. And then I submitted it, not to a blog, not to Reddit, but directly to the corporate team at the audit firm that offered me the job. A week later, I got a call from HR. "Claire," the woman said, "we'd like to offer you something more than the internship. Our board read your report, and we're creating a new diversity initiative focused on students who succeeded despite adverse family circumstances. We'd like you to be its face and its first hire." They offered me a full-time salaried position with a relocation package to New York, mentorship, and the opportunity to help design programs for future students like me. That would have been enough, but life had one more twist ready. A month later, I received a letter from a lawyer. Not mine. Turns out, my aunt and uncle had quietly filed to claim me as a dependent on their taxes for 8 straight years, including years when I no longer lived with them. Since they technically never adopted me, it was fraud. Guess who caught it? The same audit firm I now worked for. Turns out, when my story was circulated internally as part of the initiative announcement, one of the tax investigators flagged the Dawson household name in a suspicious claim review. Within days, they connected the dots. And now, my aunt and uncle are facing a formal audit and a possible investigation for tax fraud. When I found out, I just sat in silence. Not smiling. Not laughing. Just breathing. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't trying to prove I deserved love. I had built something so strong that it had turned back and protected me. The girl they ignored had become the woman with enough power to hold them accountable. It's funny how people who never once lifted you up can suddenly see your value the moment it threatens their comfort. After the audit firm launched the investigation, things unraveled fast. My aunt and uncle received a formal letter from the IRS. The audit was underway. Their bank accounts, tax filings, and even Kennedy's tuition receipts were being combed through line by line. Turns out, they didn't just claim me as a dependent illegally. They had also forgotten to report tens of thousands in untaxed income from a side business Uncle Mark ran under a different LLC. It was over. They tried to reach me. Aunt Denise sent a long-winded email about misunderstandings and family unity. Uncle Mark texted twice, then tried calling me from 3 different numbers. I blocked them all. Kennedy, meanwhile, posted a string of passive-aggressive stories on Instagram, accusing me of being a heartless traitor and jealous since childhood. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The court date was set for early spring. While I wasn't directly involved in the prosecution, I was named in the documents as a triggering witness, since my scholarship report had inadvertently uncovered the fraud. That label? It stuck. They called me a triggering witness. I'll never forget the look on Aunt Denise's face when I saw her outside the courthouse. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even fear. It was shame. For once, she had nothing to say. Kennedy didn't show up. Uncle Mark tried to approach me that day, but I just stepped back and said, "You wanted me to pay you back. Well, this is the only debt I ever owed you, the truth." The firm stood by me the entire way. Not only did they keep me on staff, they promoted me within months. I helped build their new program for students with complex family backgrounds. I even got invited to speak at a university conference where Dr. Kaplan introduced me as the most resilient student I've ever taught. But the most surreal moment? I was offered the chance to mentor a group of undergraduates from low-income backgrounds, just like I had been. One of them asked me, "What was the moment you knew you'd made it?" And I told them the truth. It wasn't the job offer. It wasn't the scholarship. It was the day I stopped begging people to see me and started choosing myself instead. My story isn't about vengeance in the traditional sense. I didn't sabotage anyone. I didn't ruin their lives out of spite. But I did stop protecting the people who let me suffer in silence, and when the truth finally caught up to them, it didn't need my help to burn everything down. I stood in the fire, walked out stronger, and never looked back. If that ending hit you hard too, drop a 2 in the comments, and stick around if you want more stories like this.